Hey, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks for joining us in the library on the Wi-Fi pod.
It's a location shoot.
Yes, we're on location. We are.
Mm-hmm.
I like shooting in here.
You do.
I like showing off my
Collection.
my toys that I not so subtly put right over my right shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I see that.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking that it would be fun on these library shoots if we hid an Easter egg that was topic related
Okay. Oh, I
in
like
the
that.
frames.
I like
And
it.
then if somebody writes in, right, they get
Mhm.
a 50% off code to something.
Wow, I was gonna
You know.
say gift card to Gimme Coffee.
Oh, well, that doesn't help people who don't live in Ithaca.
I know, I was just being silly, but
Oh.
yes, I think that would be cute and fun.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Do you have any check-ins? Any non
Um,
sequiturs?
Not that I can think of right now. I mean, we're here
You sure are.
doing our thing. I'm pretty focused on the topic today.
Oh, okay. Then maybe we shouldn't. No diatribes.
Oh,
Just get you right into it.
well, I mean, diatribes are fine.
They are. I have nothing. Also, I'm trying to think of what we did recently.
Oh, um, hmm.
Yeah, we did all the. I mean, we had a busy June. So
Yeah.
stuff had slowed down. Well, I mean, Omega is in a week.
Yeah, Omega less than. I mean,
Right. If it's Tuesday,
we leave on Sunday.
you leave on Sunday.
Check-in is Sunday.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're going to be at Omega. It's going to be fun times.
Should.
One of my favorite campuses ever. I think that you should leave that in.
No. It's a little silly. It's not happening. Wait, why is Omega one of your favorite campuses ever?
Well, being at Omega is like being on the set of Dirty Dancing. It's very summer campy in like a high-end way.
Mm-hmm.
I also really love, so at a lot of places that are bigger venues for yoga retreats or like immersions or learning workshops, a lot of times like just the deal is very monastic housing. Right. And with that comes a shared hall bath.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And I can't tell you how I feel like I have surpassed the time frame in my life where I want to share a bathroom.
Like, are you sharing like one bathroom that has like one shower and one toilet, or
No.
is it kind of like a dormitory?
It's like a dorm.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't mind that.
You know, but for me, if I'm getting up in the middle of the night to go pee, and I have to like put on clothing,
right,
and open my eyes, and we have to remember too, like think about dorm lighting for a second. So like when you go out into the hallway, it's lit up. There are often like kind of fluorescent-y lights. Yeah, so by the time I do all of that, go pee, come back to my room, I'm awake.
Right.
Like I'm going to be awake for at least a couple hours. So I like to be able to not put clothes on, not even really open my eyes and go pee in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And if I can stay in that place, then I will go immediately back to sleep. But if I can't and there's lights on it, forget it. So what I love about Omega is even if you choose housing options that have a shared bath, they're still cabins. So it's a shared bath in the middle of these two rooms in the center of a cabin. Like you're just opening the door to your bedroom and going into the bathroom door. It's not like out into the hallway, you know. So it's just a different vibe that way. I think it's some of the best food that is made like buffet cafeteria style giant.
Have we been there? Like you and I together?
Not technically, but you drove to Omega.
Okay, then I'm thinking of something different. The time we stayed in the mountain, like a little Airbnb in like the Adirondacks, or not Adirondacks.
Oh, Menla.
Maybe that's Menla. Okay,
Menla.
I'm thinking of Menla.
Yes.
Because we did that for like the day. Okay. Omega. That's where I brought you your
Harmonium.
harmonium that you swore you wouldn't need,
Mm-hmm.
but needed almost immediately.
I did.
Yeah.
Well, in my defense,
No. I'm gonna
I
stop.
was at Kirtan school.
I love you, and I'm gonna stop you right there. The thing you were at Omega for was specifically music related. Kirtan
100%.
instruments.
Yep.
Yeah. So I did not know that when you texted me a day later and said, "Can you drive 4 hours and drop this thing off?" And I was like, "Sure, you bet."
No, that is not what happened. That is not what happened. This
Okay.
is what happened. For everybody's official record. I was at Kirtan school for a week. And the Kirtan teachers, they partner with someone who sells harmoniums. So typically what happens is this man brings a bunch of harmoniums. Everybody gets to play them and like experience playing a harmonium. And then probably there are people that end up buying them from this person. So like it's a very specific kind of process. The person that was supposed to bring all the harmoniums got COVID. So we were on like day 2 of Kirtan school, and we only had one harmonium that everyone had to share. And I was like, I have a harmonium at home. And so I called you and I was like, do you feel like going on a road trip?
That was the text I got. I said,
yeah.
And I did not know. I was so willing to do it
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know the actual thing you were going to, that it was Kirtan school.
Mm-hmm.
If I knew that, I would have been, I'm glad I didn't know. I would have been way madder. Like, why didn't you bring it? Just leave it in the car if you don't need it. Just bring it to a music thing.
Well, I didn't want to give anybody the idea or impression that I knew what I was doing.
That's fine. And it could have stayed in the car, is my point. The car that you drove there. That's where it could have lived.
What do we know now? We always put the harmonium in the car.
No, we now know. I have to know the names of the things you're going to.
I mean, that probably should be true anyway. Yeah, so we're going to Omega. You have been there because when you brought the harmonium to me, they were like, your poor husband, please have him come and eat lunch.
Right.
You know.
Which was great because I was hungry.
And so we did that.
I did. And I went into the room where your workshop was wrapping up. Sort of. You were moving on to the last thing.
We were going to lunch.
Yeah. And then I said, I tried to just sneak in, drop it off, say I love you and go.
Yep.
And then the gentleman running it, thank you so much. Everyone, give him a round of applause.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, this is great. Thank you so much. Then he offered me a seat in the circle for whatever improv jam sesh was about to happen. And my mouth said, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I have a dog in the car. I got to take him out and walk him a little bit. My heart said, thank you so much, but that is my nightmare.
Yes.
So I'm just going to say thank
Fresh
you and walk
hell.
away. That is my hell. I am going to reciprocate the kindness and get the hell out because I'm not about that.
No. But you did have lunch with me in the
Yeah.
cafeteria, so you did experience the deliciousness of Omega food.
Yes, it was very good.
Yeah.
And was it all
And
vegan?
plentiful.
Or at least vegetarian?
They do have a meat option usually.
Right.
They
But I
do.
don't, for like walking into a place like that and thinking, ooh, what kind of food are they going to have here? It was delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good.
That's exciting.
So I'm excited about Omega. It's going to be fun to spend the week with some students and hang out and do our fun shit.
Nice.
And yeah, we're excited.
Sweet.
But that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No. If anything, my shirt should give an indication as to the clue of the topic of the day.
It's possibly the only shirt that you own with American flags on it.
Facts.
Facts.
Yeah, I had an Iron Maiden shirt with their mascot Eddie dressed up as Uncle Sam. I've not seen the shirt in a while. I think I cut the sleeves off to do outside stuff in, and
Dear Lord.
it got tossed.
No way.
Yeah, it says Cthulhu for President 2024.
Why not?
Why choose the lesser evil?
Let's just go all in.
I love this shirt so much.
Let's go all in.
So, what are we here to talk about?
We're going to talk about the themes of this week because Thursday, so 2 days from now, is Independence Day.
Yes, it is.
And So we figured it was a good time to talk about things like freedom, independence, since the buzzwords will be flying all over.
They
We
will.
can hashtag freedom, hashtag independendence.
Anyone who's looking for those hashtags is gonna love the stuff we have to say.
I had this realization too because we were watching Dazed and Confused, and it was the bicentennial.
Yep.
That in 2 years it's going to be 250 years.
That's right.
So if there's still a U.S. government at that point, if we haven't completely dissolved
Wow.
into whatever's next,
Seriously, we haven't become the next thing.
250 years of
Wow.
American empire.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of just like provided we still have an illusion at that point that we're a democracy, there's going to be just so much, red, white, and blue.
There will be. You're right.
Going on all over the place.
I know. I'll be celebrating the anniversary of Joshua Chamberlain's Defense of Little Round Top.
Okay. Love it.
Which is today.
Today.
Is the 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And for those of you listening, that was part of the Battle of Gettysburg. That was a 3-day battle.
Oh.
Sometimes you can't just say Little Round Top and assume that everybody's like, yeah.
Yes, you're right. Is the
yes, Little Round Top.
Ah, yes, Little Round Top.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, far superior than the Big Round Top.
Weirdly.
No, Battle of Gettysburg, 1863.
Yep.
3 days, July 1, 2, and 3.
So, we often celebrate that this time of year. Well, and I was thinking too that within these kind of it's like we have the American narrative, right? That like freedom and independence are synonymous. Discuss.
Why don't you hit me with what you have? Because I'm not as prepared as you are for that topic.
But like, think about it in a spiritual context, right? Like
Okay.
people talk about freedom. Like, what are we here to ultimately do? Freedom, 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 freedom. So a different kind of like spiritual freedom than we might typically hear when we're like freedom, FREEDUMB.
All caps.
All caps. When we're thinking about spiritual freedom from suffering, ultimately is what that refers to. Like, there's lots of different threads to it, but at the root of it all, when we say we're on a path to freedom or spiritual freedom, it is the freedom from suffering. It's the freedom from the hook of egoic stories, of samskaras. Like, it's that. So freedom being in the wider vernacular outside of spiritual communities, being connected to independence. Like, if you're independent, you're free. That is not the way that it's presented in spiritual context.
Oh, in the way that like we are not like like we're not an island. We
Right.
are dependent on one another for survival, for community, things like that. Reminds me of here's the benefit. If you're ever a quiet person like myself and you say something that's borderline, I won't say maybe insightful, or you notice something and you say it, people have a tendency to remember that for a long time. I was an undergrad. I was a junior in college and taking like a history of like, I think it was the Gilded Age. So it was like mid to late 1800s into the 20th century. And we kept talking about like this rugged individual type. And like that was a type that's like was made famous in the era. And then professor pointed out, she said something like about the importance of families and community in moving out west and settling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, doesn't that directly contradict this whole rugged individualist arc that we're trying to push? She referenced that for the entire semester.
You made her a whole semester.
Like, not every class, but like she did it throughout this. Like, I may have said that in September, October, and it was December when, she referenced it at least a few times, and I was like, we really remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I did not think that was so awe-inspiring, but
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So yeah, that's why I keep myself. That only it reinforced my need to stay quiet and just sprinkle in some.
Sprinkle in the good stuff.
Sprinkle in some observations. It wasn't even that like mind blowing.
I mean, it's good. It's good. And I remember having, this must clearly be just like part of history undergrad, that you have to learn this part of American history in particular, right? Where it's like fierce individualism, rugged is the word used so often.
Right.
Individualism, independence, all of those things, and feeling like if a person wanted to colonize, because that's what we were doing, the frontier, and they were like, I'm going to do this by myself. I'm going to do this, what's his name, McCandless style, where I go out into the wild.
Oh, man.
And
that movie did not do that boy any favors.
Well, and you know what? Like, what a perfect example of how rugged, fierce individualism, teetering on hubris and ego, gets you dead.
Yeah. I mean, you could have had all the information about how to survive and still died.
Because human beings aren't independent. And not only are human beings not independent, when we're, if we go back into this awareness around spiritual growth, and part of the benchmarks of that is not just saying or like wearing it on a yoga tank top that's super cute that says we are all one. It's having a visceral, like, embodied experience of oneness with other people, with the human condition, with us as a collective, with society, with humanity, whatever word you want to use, right? So when we're on a spiritual path and we think about freedom, the cultural narrative that freedom means independence from, not being what's the word? Reliant, dependent on other people, right? That is a complete illusion, and it's capitalist mindset too, because really every man, woman, human for themselves, as opposed to the we before the me.
Right. Oh man, I don't know who I saw on TikTok debating this idea. Like, the idea that we are interdependent, we are not independent, is how much trust you put in others when you leave the house. This person was like, what are you talking about? I don't trust any systems. I'm like, you trust that when you go at a green light, everyone's going to stop. Like, yes, you do. You just don't you do. You trust all the systems the second you leave your house.
Right.
And, you don't think of it that way, but yeah, you do. Like, I am dependent on person at the other light making sure they don't T-bone me if I'm going across the intersection,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when we sit down and think about our oneness and our weeness. Weeness. Does anybody remember that? Weeness.
Yeah, I do.
This was your weeness?
It still is.
It still is your weeness.
Yep.
Remember when the kids would do weeness 5? They were ahead of their times because it was like such a like. It could have been used during COVID instead of a high five, right?
Can we please, we have to say this out loud into microphones. I have to listen to it at least 3 times.
Okay.
The next time we see all of the children.
For 4th of July.
I mean, any time we run into them, right? And we have to keep in mind, the next time, if we say something or if we're like, hey, good job, Weenus 5, we have to do it.
Okay.
You and me.
We're going to do it.
We'll see what their reaction is.
It's going to be great.
Hopefully they'll be appalled, but I don't know.
They probably will just roll their eyes at us like they usually do.
That's the kind of goal I'm going for.
So anyway, going back to the weeness.
Back to the weeness.
That is part of where how we be in community is the macrocosm of how we're being in our spiritual landscape and within ourselves. So, if you are very eye-centric, eye-focused, that is an egoic pull. And the more that you can replace that thinking with the we thinking, the greater community thinking, the more equipped you are to engage in interdependence in a mindful way. Because it is happening. Like anyone who perceives still that they are independent. And I think like that is such a rewarded thing too, like to be hyper resilient and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and all that ridiculous language, right? Like, no, we're not independent. And I think that this gets muddled within relationship too, because often people on a spiritual path, like, and I'm not going to single out particular gender identities or sexual orientations in this moment.
Everyone that knows you knows exactly who you're talking about.
And there's this idea that like, well, I'm here for freedom. So I can't be bound to material plane things like a committed partnership, right? So I'm here for freedom. And that, again, is linking that capitalist story that freedom and individualism are synonymous. And they're not. It's a falsehood. And we continue to be fed this falsehood over and over and over again. And then we watch it play out in politics, right? So I'm not going to say a whole lot about the shit show of a debate that went on because, honestly,
it was the most useless. For so many reasons.
Like, we know who these men are.
Right, yeah. One, they have both had this job before.
They both had this job before.
So right there, they're not going to say anything that we don't
already know about them.
Who is the person that tunes in and is like, I really got to learn more about their platform?
I really don't know what this man is all about. No, it was like Nero's circus. It was like a complete, just like entertainment gladiator nonsense.
Well, that and also the conventions haven't happened.
Right.
So it is possible, however unlikely, that both of these candidates could not be in the election because of whatever reason, whatever happens.
It's possible.
They haven't been nominated yet. That's not until I know the Democratic one is like August 8th through 11th or something like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't care one bit about it.
Just pageantry. It was absolute like ego feed ridiculousness. And the only thing that I will say about it is if you did watch that, a fun activity, I think, when you're watching political debate is to pay attention to not what they say, how they convey a message, how a candidate, regardless of like level of office, conveys a message. Because if we're talking about body politic, if we're talking about we the people, then we should be said more than me or I in any debate, in any speech, in any communication of how you're about to do this job, right? And this whole like, what the hell was that? It was just like it was like, oh, here are two people who have already had this job before. Let's interview them. For the job they already had or have currently. It was just so weird. It's like bizarre.
The only useful question in an interview like that would be, can you explain the gap on your resume? And I think we all know what's been going on in that gap for one of the candidates.
What you been doing? What you been doing?
What you been up to?
Because that, like, again, we're talking about who is more connected and cognizant of the we and who is on an ego trip. And I think it was Barack Obama, right? Was it Obama who said, like, anyone who wants to be the president of the United States has to at least teeter on narcissism? Has to
be a little bit of a narcissist.
So, like, let's just hold that in abundant awareness here.
Right. I mean, let's remove and ignore the part of the brain that is narcissistic that would even get you to think about doing this job.
Right.
We're going to ignore that because we can argue that all 40 some odd have that at some point.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anyone who's ever run for president, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that the focus could be, when your ears are just like bleeding and melting because you're just watching this like most horrible. I mean, we taught high school and I've heard high schoolers debate better.
Yes.
And have conversations better,
Yeah.
like with non-prefrontal lobe fully cooked, right? Like fully developed. So, focusing on the we and the interdependence, that is actual functioning democracy, which is a topic of another time. Because at the heart of all of it, and anyone who would be listening to the Yoga Farm podcast must have some inclination towards not separating your spiritual path from your day-to-day life path. And we talk a lot in the programs about how like you can't separate spiritual growth, personal life, personal practices from politics. And sure, we can say that at a larger level there is a separation of religion and politics within this country, allegedly, supposedly. And when it comes to the individual moving on this path, right? Like we get to understand that these things are not separable. Like you cannot separate how you be in your spiritual inner landscape and then play out on the like stage of humanity.
Right. It's the false sense or false idea that, oh, I don't really get political. I mean, you do. Every decision you make,
every single one,
could be traced to some type of political issue. And it's, so like it's maybe not every, but like many. I think it's people, just ignore. That's okay. Where do you buy your groceries? You buy them from somewhere. You make a choice that can be somewhat political.
It's definitely political.
Yeah.
Where you spend your money is always political.
Yep.
Did I mention to you the curiosity that I had? So we were reading that book, the Ken Follett book, together.
Yes. A Place Called Freedom.
A Place Called Freedom. On the nose. For our topic today. A Place Called Freedom. And I was also reading because there was a lot of political discourse, political upheaval in that book, A Place Called Freedom.
Yes. I mean, I'm halfway through.
Uh-huh.
Definitely, yes, political. Almost, do I want to say more social? Because not really, because they're involving strikes about the coal.
I mean,
loaders.
it's social, it's class related.
Yes.
It's social history, class related history, and of course it's political because everything is political.
Yes.
And then I've been reading Women of the Raj for book club. Yoga Farm Ithaca's summer book club is Women of the Raj, and it talks about British colonial rule within India at the turn of the century during the Industrial Revolution. Primarily, it talks a little bit about the 1800s as well, so it jumps around in time, and it's focused mostly on the height of the Raj. And there's a part in the book where they're talking about how in England, Great Britain at that time, talking about politics was ubiquitous. And it would happen, women would talk about it during tea. Men would talk about it with cigars and bread. Talking about the politics and what the prime minister was doing and the royal family and all these different pieces was very much a part of British culture. British people that lived in India during the Raj that were brought there to enforce colonial rule, it suddenly was a faux pas to talk about politics. And so that this was a huge transition for women's social circles, because the topics that they were once able to sit around and discuss when they lived back home were now completely off limits.
Really?
From a taboo,
Really?
These are the things you don't discuss.
What caused that change?
Exactly. So I couldn't help but think about, like, when did it, like, when in U.S. history did it become the spoken, unspoken rule of, like, oh, you're at a dinner party.
Right.
You don't discuss religion. You don't discuss politics.
Yeah.
Where I feel like my office hours on Friday, that's like all we're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
That's all we're talking about.
I remember always. I don't think I remember a time where I didn't understand the idea that, well, you don't talk about three things in mixed company, right? Religion, sex, and politics.
Oh,
like
sex?
Yeah.
Never heard that one.
No? Yeah, it's in mixed company, right? Like at the dinner party. No, so I mean, geez, I was born in 79, so it's always been a thing for me. So maybe early 80s, but I mean, even then.
No, it's got to be before that.
It's
Anyway, it's something we need to look into because I can't stop being curious about, like, what was it?
I'm gonna
because
say,
you know what my
oh, what? Go ahead.
theory is?
What's that?
It's whenever your government has started officially doing really shady shit.
Oh, I was gonna say Watergate with Nixon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's Nixon's halfway through Nixon's first term.
It's possible. I mean, I think I want to say more so like McCarthyism,
Okay.
post World War II, maybe
Right, so
in
like-
American culture.
All right.
I don't know. Let's
Maybe
look into
post. I mean, I would say maybe definitely after Eisenhower, maybe during the Kennedy.
it. Yep.
That could have been also
Yep.
it. Don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know.
Interesting idea to look into. Yeah.
Curious. Because it's like one of the things, right? Where it's like if we now have taken away your freedom to have appropriate discourse
Right.
with the people in your circle, whatever level that is, coworkers, colleagues, friends, family, we have significantly increased the amount of sneakiness that can go on because people aren't going to be talking about it, So interesting. And I think that when we look at this through the lens that is really provided. So one of the things that I love about Eastern spirituality is its ability to put the responsibility on an individual to pass nearly every single thing in their lives through the 8 limbs of yoga.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And specifically the first two, the yamas and the niyamas, right, are like the anchors to the rest of that path. And the yamas, to sum it up like really, really simply, is like how you be in the world. And the niyamas are like your internal temple, how to take care of like the internal temple. So with those first two steps, like we have kind of an instruction manual of a lot of things if we're using them in real life, in real time. And so whenever, people are always like, well, how do you know? Like there's the media is corrupt and these people are lying and everything is owned by one, super PAC anyway. So how can we trust anything that we're seeing on the news, reading online, and I just keep going back to like hone your intuition for one and trust it. And also you have these gateways to pass things through. Any political decision, any human being's behavior that's, remember, supposed to represent you.
Right.
Represent you. So passing them through like the standards of how you would want the world to operate. And so the first yama is ahimsa. Do you remember that one?
Do no harm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Look at you, babe.
Do no harm and take no shit.
I don't think the second part.
Well, that's on my.
But I like it.
Yes.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to do no harm. I would even take it an extra step to go into the category of kindness, like active kindness out in the world to other beings, all other sentient beings. Um, and I think like it's easy to be like, oh yeah, well, I mean, we don't want to purposefully elect people who are doing harm,
Mm-hmm.
and also name a U.S. politician,
Right.
like name a president.
Right.
Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter did no harm. Continues
Right.
to do no harm.
I mean, I don't know. I'm sure if you really wanted to look at his at what he did every single day, I'm sure some decision he made as president.
Sure.
Right. I would also argue he is probably one that has made quite a few. He's definitely seemed to be more heart-centered than anyone that was before or after.
Well, so, and here's the thing that I think we don't talk about a lot with Ahimsa is just this like general do no harm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, what happens when it happens? Right.
Right.
Like, it's
Right.
going to happen.
Yep.
The ability for someone to recognize, apologize, admit things like a misstep, a failure, an oops, like I made this choice instead of this choice. Neither of them were great choices.
Right.
I think that I weighed everything, like the complicatedness of being human and being able to say, yes, absolutely. I acknowledge and I apologize where that needs to happen. And I think we can also look back in political history and see who had the ability to do that and who did not.
Mm-hmm.
And who continues to not.
Right. Yeah.
The second one is just hilarious to me because whenever we start getting lining up political candidates with Satya.
Okay.
Satya means truth. Truthfulness, not
Truthful.
lying.
Yep.
There's a lot of lying in politics.
Yeah.
And I think it's a cop-out to be like, well, all politicians lie. All politicians make shitty decisions. Like, that's kind of just like, oh, so you're absolved from the responsibility of doing the work.
Right.
Of figuring out, like, who actually is in alignment with your opinions and beliefs.
Or because one president you look at and say, well, they lied, so this one lying is not a big deal.
Right.
And like, well,
the precedent of lying.
This is, well, it's not, it's also not, I mean, yes, probably a lot of either, let's say, untruths or half-truths or, is it the 100% honest-to-God truth every time they speak? No, probably not. And I would argue sometimes for a good reason. Maybe president doesn't need to let everyone know every single thing that's happening the second it is. As it's happening, probably not, I would say.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just because one acts that way and you look at another candidate / president and say, wow, you're doing nothing but lying. Or there are a greater number of mistruths coming out of your mouth than someone else, and that doesn't make them both right. But definitely is one, I would argue, worse than the other.
So you know what my question is around political candidates and whatever, horse and pony show is going on out there. Are they honest when they don't know something?
Yeah. That's a great litmus test for
humans.
People in general.
Humans.
Right. People you interact
with.
And
definitely politicians. Yep, you're going to make mistakes. And again, ability to apologize, ability to recognize failure. In the truthfulness category, can you be truthful enough to say there's a lot of stuff I don't know?
Right, like Bill Clinton being the president, governor of Arkansas, maybe not right out of the gate has a lot of knowledge on foreign policy right away.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, there is that learning curve.
There's a learning curve.
To get up there and say, I'm the master at foreign policy and no one else is as good as me. It's like, come on, really?
It's a very stupid thing to say. It's a stupid thing to say. And it also creates this domino effect of like, well, this person made a bombastic claim, so now all the focus is going to be on like disproving that. Do you know what happens when you get in front of a microphone and you're like, I don't actually know a lot about this?
Yeah.
I'm open to learning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also open to surrounding myself with people who I perceive are smarter than I am.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's the other. Can you be honest about what you don't know and actively seek people who are masters
Right.
within that
Who are
topic?
experts in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can your ego take a back seat long enough for you to be like, you know what? I might be the president, and this person is the authority on this topic.
Yeah.
So that's how we apply Satya when it's so easy to be like, well, nobody is truthful about anything. Asteya is an interesting one because it's directly-ish translated to non-stealing.
Okay.
Which, when I talk about this in yoga teacher training, people are like, "This is so easy. I don't steal stuff." Like I don't walk into Target, load up a bag of things, and walk out. Like, I don't steal things regularly. And yet, how many people steal other people's time?
Right. Yeah.
And energy and resources. And so I talk about that in the context of like being a yoga teacher and not starting your class on time or not ending it on time or promising to do something and not following through. Like, all of that is stealing. It's so much more than like stealing a material object, right? And it's also like on a political sphere and platform, right? When we're asking our leaders to not steal, we are asking them to be conscious of the energy that they're consuming. We are asking them to recognize and to give credit to the people who make it possible. I mean, like, all this focus on executive branch kills me. Every election, I'm like, where is all of this hoopla when we're electing, the mayor of whateverville? Because it's a web. It's also interdependent and interconnected. There isn't fierce individualism as the president either.
Right.
So, like, are the people who are in higher positions of power stealing time, ideas, energy, resources from people for their own advancement? Are they able to recognize the contributions of everyone who put them in that, who trusted them to be put in that position?
Yeah. Yeah. People never go to time first as far as stealing.
No.
And that's the one that drives me crazy the most sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I think that on the political stage, quite literally, there's a lot of stealing of time in just like mindless arguments.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think in the last debate, there was something, so I don't know who said it about, it's like, oh, so-and-so, I could beat you at golf or something. I'm like, who gives a shit? Couldn't care less. Like, don't respond to that.
Don't respond to that.
Don't respond to that. You should respond with, are you kidding me? This is what we're going to, all these people in the country are looking at us and thinking, this is what we're arguing about. This is what we're, just stop it. Oh, it's so awful.
Stealing people's time. And that was a demonstration of individualism, of independence. Like, I can do this. Well, I can do that. How does that help anyone?
No.
It doesn't. I appreciate your knowing your golf score, honey.
Oh, yeah.
I am also like,
I wouldn't.
This isn't going to impact the...
I wouldn't walk into a job interview and be like, I shot an 84 the other day.
Even a job you already had.
Right. So explain this gap on your resume.
Well, golf.
Shooting 84s. How about that?
How about I talk to you about my golf score?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is
ridiculous.
This is a job for an engineering firm. I don't know why you're talking about this.
Yeah. And it leads into, asteya, non-stealing, when we think about it from an energetic perspective, time perspective, currency perspective, it leads right into brahmacharya. Brahmacharya, usually people think it means quickly translated to celibacy. Like you have to be celibate, and then it loses a ton of people whenever anybody gets to that
like,
that yama. They're like,
ahimsa,
nope.
Ahimsa, check. Satya, check. How about
No?
We'll put that one at the end.
We're
we're
gonna
gonna come back to this one later.
pause that one.
We're gonna have a discussion about this one.
And it doesn't mean that. It means right use of energy.
Oh.
So the recognition that all energy that is cultivated within the human body system, sexual and otherwise, is life force energy. It's a precious resource.
Yeah.
So you don't waste it. And you be conscious about where you're directing energy, sexual or otherwise. And it isn't taken for granted. It isn't, like brahmacharya is just about that awareness that this is your life force. This is very precious. And are you going to engage your life force in something that is, kind of meaningless and
destructive
or like addictive kind of, or are you going to cultivate it and use it wisely? So it's the right use of energy. And so when I think about this in like the broader sense, it's like, what are the things? Right use of energy is going to bring us to a place of happiness, joy, fulfillment, collective consciousness, right? Like it's adding to the very collective that we belong to, right? And so when we apply that to a political scene, how is our, let's just say president, devoting their energy to collective well-being? And where are the candidates that are doing that? And what is the evidence that they're doing that? I mean, I would argue that there are many of them that are out there doing really phenomenal work in the world that is geared towards the overall health, happiness, and well-being of the entire population. And if that isn't the focus, then this is where like brahmacharya can be, you can take it to the like, you're not using your energy in alignment. You're not in integrity with your energy use. So it's like, really wanting to see demonstrated just the ability to discern what is right use of energy and what is not. I mean, we could go back to that exact example of the debate again and say like, you're devoting all this energy to talking about your golf score right now.
Yeah.
Like that is an energy drain. That doesn't support any collective initiative whatsoever.
Right. Your ability to play an individual game, quite literally, a game where you are only by yourself.
Right.
Is like just a metaphor for like, does not concern the collective.
Yeah. And sometimes, right use of energy is, your continued self-study. Sometimes right use of energy. So like, where are candidates continuing to learn and grow and surround themselves with people that have different opinions? I mean, we've talked in our personal podcast about presidents and
their
Enneagram types, and I frequently reference, which is a silly sentence to say, Abraham Lincoln. Is
it? I don't think it's a weird thing to say around here.
And his intentional team of rivals. Like, why would I? If you truly believe that you have a level of intellect, experience, moral capacity, and ethics to hold the highest office, then why not surround yourself with people that disagree with you?
Right.
It should be no threat.
Right. Yeah.
It should be no threat.
Right.
So anyone that you see just, I don't know, firing people all the time. I don't know if that rings a bell for anyone. Because they disagreed with them. Like, how is that brahmacharya? How is that effective use of your energy? How is that encouraging growth and seeing different perspectives? Because there clearly is a lack of awareness that your perspective is yours because of the path that you've walked, and there are infinite numbers of paths that people can walk. And how are you going to know about them?
Right.
If you shut down anyone who disagrees with you.
You're right.
Yeah. So just brahmacharya does have a bit to do with ethics and morals, but more so right use of energy and alignment and ensuring that the energy that you're expounding, whatever energy that you're expelling.
Yeah.
Sure. Is in alignment with what your priorities are. And you can tell a lot by what people do and what they spend their energy on. And I think maybe, the last yama is just kind of comical. Because it's aparigraha.
What's that one?
Which means non-greed, non-hoarding.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't really know if we need to say a whole lot about that. Like, greed in a political lens is colonization, slavery, environmental destruction, abuse of resources, disregard of the entire natural biome of the earth. Like, all of that can be traced back to greed and hoarding of resources, like, the dragon and the gold kind of thing. So, is there any politician out there that is talking about how there is enough for everyone?
No. Right? Like, no. It's not. No, because then I don't know how to describe what I'm saying right now, but there's not a lot of any talk except, like, especially like in election season, it's us and them, right? From everybody, right? That's the lens which all conversations, speeches are through right now, because they have to set themselves apart from the other that we're that they're trying to quote unquote defeat, or I don't know.
Yeah. Aparigraha. Just some non-greed.
Non-greed would be awesome.
Redistribution of wealth.
Yeah, the older I get, I know sometimes I hear people say, well, you'll get more conservative as you get older. And I have not found that to be the case for me.
I have not found that to be the case for me either.
I definitely I'm getting grumpier about things.
Also,
getting grumpier.
Freedom and individualism are not synonymous. Conservatism and grumpiness are not synonymous, despite popular belief.
Yes, I'm getting definitely grumpier about certain things. And especially, it almost feels like it's conservative if I'm griping about a younger generation or something they do. So it's like, this isn't really a conservative talking point or argument I'm making, but I'm still grumpy at some of the crap I see these kids today do. But I think I'm pretty good at recognizing that when that happens.
And you also don't take yourself too seriously.
No,
so
I don't take myself
doesn't turn into a
too seriously
diatribe
at all. But no, as more time goes by, I am definitely left of center, especially like there is enough for everyone, and there's no reason for everyone to not have You know what I mean? It's like there's no, I don't care anymore. Like the idea that, oh, it means like if your taxes went to X, Y, and Z, I'm like, what? So people could like live and maybe go to school and yeah, I would
Be happier.
love that. I would I would love to live in that society where literally everyone has enough to live, has enough to do. Like if they would like to learn, advance them, like they can. And it's just you just have to like literally go do it. Like no barriers as far as like anything. Like I don't care. That creates a great like place to live. Like yeah, I mean, you know, it's like I don't know. I can't even. It's so frustrating.
When I think of freedom, because freedom tends to be our
Buzzword
mantra. It's the
This time of
U.S.'s
year?
mantra.
Ugh.
It's just so consistently
It really is.
the U.S.'s mantra. Unless we're talking about reproductive rights, in which case we're going to throw that word in the garbage.
I just hate that freedom is always like, freedom.
Freedom.
But also, that thing you're doing over there, I hate, and it should be illegal.
It should be illegal for you to do that.
Have a hard time reconciling that with the definition of freedom.
I don't know where this became such a, like, patriotic rallying cry.
I think it was a post-Vietnam thing, late 70s, early 80s.
Well, I think
Cold War
maybe
ending
it
type
was
thing.
a bit like co-opted during that time, because I want to believe that the root was in the For Freedom speech that FDR made.
Yeah.
And how and granted, like, don't get me wrong, anybody, like, don't come after me because FDR wasn't a perfect president. No shit. And also he was using this as a political platform to help people understand that we needed to go to war. We needed to be involved in World War II. We needed to fight fascism. Weird. Right? And what he was not warning, because I don't feel like FDR really used like a lot of those fear tactics around talking to the American public.
Definitely his first administration and terms were like getting people out of the Depression. So it was like not fear talk. It was the exact opposite. Like he did not want to use any sort of that lingo, that jargon.
And he applied that to the end of our isolationist political stance of like, we don't get involved in stuff that's going on. And we can all do the revisionist history where we're like, oh, if we had stayed isolationist, yeah, sure. But that didn't happen. We were invested in fighting fascism under his guidance that people had the right to 4 freedoms. Which always makes me think of the Norman Rockwell poster.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you remember what they are?
Nope.
Freedom from want, freedom from fear, freedom from...
Don't you have a computer right there?
Hunger?
We're going to edit this part out. Dramatic pause. There's that Scorpio dramatic pause we love.
Okay. 4 freedoms.
4 freedoms.
Freedom of speech.
Oh, okay.
Freedom of worship. So freedom of religion. Freedom from want, poverty, and the freedom from fear.
Yep. Nice.
And from a spiritual perspective, I could say that if you have freedom from those 4 things, you probably can also access freedom from suffering, right? And that those are fundamental human rights that if they are not in place, talking to somebody about just like, well, stop having expectations around hunger and you would stop suffering, like that's some spiritual bypassing shit.
Yeah.
So when Roosevelt was talking about, these fundamental rights, it came from a place of such conviction that this, and that he was speaking specifically around, this is not just the rights of a United States citizen.
Right.
This is a fundamental list of human rights. And then, you know, it wasn't that long after that Eleanor Roosevelt created the Declaration of Universal Human Rights that the UN adopted.
Oh.
And Roosevelt's vision of a United Nations was based on that everyone in the world should have access to these 4 freedoms. And so it's like we had such a good thing going. We had such a good thing going with the freedom thing.
Yeah, we did.
Until it turned into freedom mixed with fierce individualism.
Right, yeah.
Because if Roosevelt meant, like, you have these freedoms.
Right.
But nobody else does.
No one else does.
Or U.S. citizens have these freedoms, but no one else needs to. Right. That would be further, you know, supporting that narrative of rugged individualism and, like, you know, we are the USA and we are the pillars of, you know, democracy and civilization and all of those other lies that we were told in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Social studies.
8th grade.
And yet it was about the universal. It was about, you know, this applies to everyone. And so, you know, whether we're passing our critical thinking lens in regards to U.S. politics through the Yamas, or we're passing them through just the awareness of the foundations of freedom and what that means and how it can be translated and applied to real life. And also that at the root of it is to relieve suffering. Who is actively trying to relieve suffering, and what political office can they hold? And how do we continue to support candidates that are honestly on that path? I think that's the starting point anyway, to combining, without pulling all of your hair out.
Right, yeah.
Spiritual awareness and political action and participation. Otherwise, it's so easy to like dissociate and become you know, full of despair.
Yep. Yeah.
And
that's true.
vomiting.
Oh boy. Honey, I learned a lot today.
You know, just a little Independence Day from a former social studies teacher.
Constantly impressed when you talk about this stuff.
Yeah?
Yeah. I couldn't do it.
Thanks, babe.
I try to listen and ask good questions, but...
You know, I'm going to give some credit to the movie Dazed and Confused. We were talking about how, like, we watch movies that we've watched forever.
Right, yeah.
You know,
there's a good number of movies that are on the annual rotation.
Yes.
Once a year they come up.
Or like a 40th anniversary of them will come up. So we'll watch, like, oh my God, this movie was made when we were, you know, children. And like how your perspective of that movie changes as you progress through life.
Yep.
And we've referenced Clueless, the movie Clueless, a lot, and how like at one time we identified with the kids, and then there very clearly was a stepping over the threshold where we were identifying with the teachers. And, you know, I think, like, of course, when I watched Dazed and Confused back when it came out, and I was like, this is the coolest representation of high school ever. And the 90s and the 70s weren't all that different in the way that high school played out.
Yeah.
I mean, the clothes were a little different. The cars were a little different.
I had that comment that I said that to you while we were watching it. I think, like, we had our high school experience was more similar to what was depicted in that movie.
Right. Or our parents' high school experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And then our kids' experience
totally
us,
different.
Like, it was only 20 some odd years between the two.
Yep.
And they were worlds apart.
Yeah. But watching it, I realized, like, there must have been a little drop of a seed planted when that history teacher
as
dismisses the students.
Kids are leaving class for the last class of the school year, and like, don't forget, while you're celebrating the bicentennial, you're really celebrating a bunch of old white rich men who didn't want to pay taxes.
Aristocratic, slave-owning white men that didn't want to pay their taxes.
Yeah.
And I was like, this lady, I love her. I want to be her when I grow up.
It's amazing. And look, here you are.
Here I am.
There you are.
Here I am, not teaching social studies.
That's all
and
right. Well, you are.
can't help
Just
myself.
not doing it in a public school,
It's true.
which I argue you found the perfect mix.
Well, thank God, because I would be fired.
No, you would not.
No,
you wouldn't.
I think so.
I don't think so.
Right now?
No.
If I was teaching U.S. history and government and I had to in any way talk about
At
that,
IHS?
yeah.
No way.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know.
There's no way. First of all,
Risky business.
not that risky, and I think administration would have your back. You're telling me the school board wouldn't be like, oh, yeah, actually, this is what you have a problem with? Well, I'm sorry. Then you have a problem with American history, not the person who's teaching it right now. But
I don't know.
But
We don't know.
We don't know. You know what? We don't have to know.
We don't
'cause
have
I think
to know.
you got the perfect combo here. And I just always fascinated because I've never viewed politics in this lens through the Yamas.
Mm-hmm.
So fascinating.
Word.
That's how you end a podcast. Good job, honey. For the Wi-Fi pod, this is Matt.
This is Jeannie.
Thanks, everyone.